Hello, everybody. I'm Curt Carstensen. This is People I Know Show. It's a podcast designed to help me fulfill my purpose in life, which I say is to learn, educate, and make lives better. In People I Know Show, I have conversations with people that have helped me to learn and educated me on things that have made my life better, and I want to share that with you, the listener, and anyone that you think might find this valuable to listen to if you do happen to share it. I hope that the conversations inspire you, or perhaps help you to think differently. In general, I'm here to hopefully entertain and help you in some way that I can't even imagine necessarily, and maybe you can't either, but that's how we all learn, I think. We're exposed to something new or different, and if we're open to change or improvement, that's called learning, and we can use what we learn to improve our life in some way. Something that might not be clear early on in the conversation is that we are based in Minnesota, USA, if you happen to be listening to this from some far distant land, and a couple other things that you can consider doing while you're listening or perhaps after, depending on what you're doing while you're listening. Go onto Facebook or Instagram, search People I Know Show, all one word, and you will find some photos that might help tell the story even better than George and I attempt to with our conversation today. Without further ado, the first conversation in the first episode of People I Know Show. I'm joined now by George Sirbasku, my longtime good friend, one of my best friends in the world, and the person I decided to have as my first guest on my first People I Know Show podcast. Welcome, George.
Thank you, Curt. This is an honor. We're sitting here staring at each other eyeball to eyeball. We never sit like this. This is unusual.
This is awkward. Perhaps we'll never do this again after this experiment. Or maybe every time moving forward, we're with each other. We'll force ourselves to look deeply in each other's eyes for the entire length of our conversation.
You have blue eyes.
I do. Thanks for noticing.
I never knew.
So, George, we're in the midst of another one of our adventures as we do this recording, and it's a perfect example of why I think you should be the first person I talk to let people into my life and to be someone that might be inspirational into a listener's life of how to maybe do some things differently than they currently do. Because I have changed a lot over the years because of you, and I thank you, and I want to tell the world how you've impacted me. So we're going to get into that, but first, I think it's the best opportunity to do this right away for someone that's listening right now, happen to give me a chance by listening to my podcast. I want you to be able to learn why is this Curt guy that I know very well or once met, or this guy that I've never met before, why is he doing this? Why should I listen? So first off, thanks for listening. And now, George, I want to give you the controls to try to get those answers out of me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, why are we in a hotel in the middle of Wisconsin? That's the first question I have.
Well, it's because, I don't know, things happen, and this is where we are, and it's the best opportunity. So I think this is a good way of letting people know why we get along so well together after so many years. So George and I, we met it must have been about 2004 in college at St. Cloud State University. Right now, we're road tripping to a concert in Chicago to watch Jeff Lynne's ELO. And this is something that, to me, I wouldn't have done at a certain point in my life, but I've learned to trust George that when he has an idea, and this is something he wanted to do, maybe not being in this hotel in Wisconsin, but he wanted to go see this concert. A concert that, yes, I would see. Would I have paid as much for tickets as I needed to normally? No, but it was an opportunity to be with George, and I've learned that doing things with George has elevated my life, and I want to keep doing that, and I want other people to experience some semblance of what I've gained from that.
Well, you just used a word that I know that you have used often and with, some reverence, and that is elevated. You are constantly looking to elevate your life. Where did that focus first come for you? When did you realize that you wanted to make change in your own life, and how did that come about?
It happened it's sometime in the last 5 or 6 years, I had a career change. And really with that at that time, I was trying to decide, what do I want to do with my life? And I think that's something that I still go through, and maybe a lot of people go through, is really moving forward. What is it that I want from my life? But I thought about it, and I didn't have an answer at all. Like, I had no idea. I had a job, making money, still surviving, but I didn't know that I was really doing anything special in any way, that I was living anything more than an ordinary life. And since that time, I think I have began to live somewhat more of an extraordinary life, at least a lot more from compared to what I used to do. And it's really been an amount of small changes. It's looking at things differently, recognizing that I can do better, that I can develop passions that if I had passions at that time, I didn't recognize them. But now I've recognized that I do have passions. I want to help people do better than they did before, see differently than they thought before, because I am doing better than I did before. I see the world so much differently now than I might have 5 years ago, definitely 10 years ago. I am such a different person. It's crazy to me how much I can change, how much a person can change in a matter of time if you begin to make some small changes in life. And those small changes have amounted to me being so much incredibly happier. I have little to no stress almost every single day. And I just look around and I see people, I meet people, I talk to people, and I just don't think the average person has as low as of a stress level, that they're getting as much enjoyment out of their lives. And I know I have gained a lot in those areas, and I want to be able to demonstrate that to others. And I think this podcast is the first best way for me to attempt to do that. Whether or not it works, I don't know. I can't promise anything to anyone. That's going to be for you to listen to this episode and continue listening and hope that there's something that comes out of it. But a main goal is, one of the big changes for me as I've consumed information and consumed media, I went from watching a lot of TV and just kind of sitting around and passively taking in information to, I almost don't watch any TV anymore. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to audiobooks. And the information that's available, if you can sift through it and make sure you're getting quality information from people that really have good intentions and have spent a lot of time in their field or educating themselves, if you can bring in all of this information and put it into your own life to make your life better, it's there for you. It's there for you, and it was there for me, and I made a lot of changes.
Well, let's be careful right away for all the folks at home. You're talking about change, and change can be stressful. And what you're saying is you've lowered stress in your life through change, but that change was incremental and over time. So it doesn't have to be all one big thing. You don't wake up today and say, suddenly I'm a new person. Clark Kent jumps into the phone booth and turns into Superman. You're talking, this has been a journey for you, and this process has helped you, but it took time, it took focus and energy, but it was small steps, baby steps.
Yeah, I'm not too quick about doing anything, so it's certainly a longer process. And yeah, I would not expect anybody to make any giant changes right away in their life. I don't know if that's even possible. I wouldn't want that for anybody, to think I need to change everything about myself right now. That certainly isn't the goal. But for instance, as I suggest listening to the podcasts or audiobooks, I don't know that I gain a ton from any one episode, any one book, but just by being open to listening to different perspectives and hearing other people's stories, I think it's a slow, gradual influence that if you allow yourself to think there are 7+ billion other people on this planet, certainly some of these people have figured out some stuff that I haven't figured out yet. And if I just listen to them and take in what they have to say, hear what they've done, some of this stuff I can put to use in my own life. And that's what I've begun, just slowly putting some ideas into my life. And it's worked. It's worked for me. I think it's worked for me. It's always possible that I'm wrong and I'm totally delusional. And you're listening to some delusional guy's first podcast right now. And I guess the joke's on you if that's the case. But I don't think that's the case. I think I've done some things right and really allowed some positive influences into my life. And I would like to be one of the people that is a positive influence into your life with some of the information that I've learned and some of the people that have helped to change me slowly, gradually, but help me see the world differently and help make my life better.
This is episode 1. You've already issued your first disclaimer.
Well, I think every piece of information that's put out on the internet should be loaded on the front end with a disclaimer, because so much of it probably should be avoided, but I don't think it's easy to recognize what should be avoided. So I'm going to be the first person to tell you, yes, I have great intentions and I think this can be positive, but I'm not trying to fool anybody here. This is hopefully useful.
We're not talking out of our butts here, although I am actually doing my best Ace Ventura talk out of your butt impression. No one at home can see that.
No, I was thinking about recording this on video, but thankfully I'm not so far.
Right. So, Curt, you've gone through a lot of changes, you've done a lot of things, and you're talking about your influences with this podcast. So, where do we begin? Where does your story, our story, how do we begin with this?
Well, let's talk about how you and I have elevated our friendship and how it has changed my life. So you and I met in about
05.
It was 05, might have been 2004, 2003. I could figure this out precisely if I really wanted to, but it's well over 10 years ago. And I think that at that time you were just somebody that I met in college.
Still am. Just somebody.
You are just somebody, but the way that you treat an interaction with someone new, and then as you get to know somebody, it's different. It is substantially different than the average person I've come across. And I want to let the world know a little bit.
Most of those interactions end in restraining orders. Is that what you're saying?
Well, perhaps for you otherwise, but with me, we avoided that. So George, something he does extremely well, and I guess I don't want to get into all the details. I want to get some of the specific things that he did really well that elevated our friendship. So like I still do today, occasionally on Facebook, at my college graduation, 2006, I invited pretty much anyone. Come to my college graduation party, which was about an hour away in my hometown from St. Cloud. Not really expecting many people to show up, but George was one of 2 people from my college era, my friends, that showed up. And what was specifically special about his was he didn't tell me. He just showed up. I think he just found my driveway, showed up, and he had this crazy blue minivan type of thing called the Danger Cart. It was just like the most exciting thing when this vehicle drove into my yard unexpectedly. And George has this way of accepting invitations, but usually not telling people that he's going to be there.
What I didn't want to tell you then, and I won't tell you until this moment, is I was lost anyway, Curt. I just happened to find... It was a serendipitous moment that this all occurred.
So though, whatever his exact route that he took there and how long that it took, he found his way there. And that was one of the times that really made me think, wow, this guy is different. He made the effort. He made the effort to drive an hour to come to my party. And we were friends, but we weren't that close. You weren't like my best college friend. But because you did that, you have become, over the years now, one of my best 2. I guess I have 2 really close college friends that I'm still in touch with, and you're one of them because of the effort that you've put in, starting with that day. And then we fast forward like a year or so. I got my first real job. I was moving to Rochester. And then the night before, you're like, try to reenact that, George, how you go about this type of thing.
How I go about look, you told me that you got your first big job. I mean, that's a big deal. This is another life moment. Not only did you graduate, now you were moving on to the great world and you were going to take it on by storm. I was excited for you. We all should be excited for our good friends, that they're doing wonderful and good things. I said that when you told me, I said we should go out and celebrate. I remember that. Like this was a moment worth celebrating, and that's what we did. I hope that everybody would feel that way. It was more than an average Saturday night. Let's say that.
I think it was a Tuesday evening or something, but we pulled it together. And
My Tuesday evenings are equal to most people's Saturday
especially
evenings.
At that point in your life, I'm sure it was. So you made the effort. We went out, we had a drink or 2 and talked. And it's not like nobody else cared, and maybe no one else really cared. Everyone's got their busy lives and they prioritize different things, but somehow you did this. And whether or not it was that extraordinary at the time, I know it made an impact on me. So then I went to Rochester, was working in my new job, and then an opportunity for you. You're in the video production field. There was a need at my job maybe a year or so later for some of that help. And again, who did I think? Who would I know? Who would I want to be a part of this? Of course, George, who had made these efforts for me before. You were the person I got in touch with, and that continued to build our friendship.
That's absolutely true. So we did get to collaborate on a couple of video projects in that endeavor. So my plan was working perfectly. It all worked out.
We traveled to Florida one year, Arizona and Florida the next year for some spring training baseball video production. And those were like two of my first really adventures of my life, because we worked during the day and then we had the evenings, and there's no way you can be with George somewhere and just like sit around and do nothing in the evening. So we created ways.
And here I thought you were going to say you can't be with George and then not get shot.
Well, we had one incident that I think we'll skip for now, where you thought that was a legitimate chance of happening, and you might have saved our lives. So this happened, and I think as we move forward and try to get to maybe some of the more interesting things we've done, what happened there is we spent a lot of time together. I remember we were driving around Florida for 12 or 13 days.
Yes.
And I think that was the time where we had so much time in the car together that whether or not we wanted to, we ended up talking about like everything in our lives. Like we were put in position where we each had a captive audience for far too many days, and we got along very well.
It went quickly. I don't have a lot going on, so most of the talking was you then.
It might have been. I think I ended up talking a lot. But coming out of that, having gotten closer, having bonded, there was, in the next couple of years, there was a couple of our friends that were getting married, and you had wild and crazy ideas, and somehow you asked me to be a part of it. And even though I thought they were the wild and craziest ideas ever, I just said, okay, I guess. Okay, George.
Well, yes. Okay. So here's first off, we have amazing friends. That's the only way that this ever gets pulled off. But yes, we had two groups of friends, or I mean, two sets of friends who were getting married, and they helped us out. So, our good friends Dave and Steph, obviously having gotten married at a just off the Mississippi River, we were able to arrive in costume as pirates to the theme song of the Pirates of the Caribbean, which was all handled by the wonderful Rob Becca, of course, and Take a Bow, Rob Becca, and that was a great day. So we were able to do that just as the wedding party was arriving. The timing was perfect. We were on the bow. I was on the bow of the boat. You piloted us in. It was a wonderful day. Following that,
okay, I want to repeat that for the listener, just in case they're passively listening. For this wedding, we arrived on boat. No one else did. We arrived on boat, dressed as pirates, and walked on shore to the theme music to the Pirates of the Caribbean, as our good friends Steph and Dave were minutes away from walking down the aisle.
That's correct. We did not tell them ahead of time. Why would we ever do that?
No, of course not.
No, we wouldn't. We didn't do that. And that was actually Plan B, because our Plan A didn't work out, and that is something I often want to make sure that I do in my life. My Plan A should be bold enough to where I need a Plan B. So Plan A didn't work out, but we were able to reutilize Plan A for another wedding. Again, Rob Becca, and when he married Charlie, and we were able to initiate Plan A from the other one. And that was, we were able to arrive to that wedding via helicopter, dressed as Colombian drug lords.
And so our friends Rob and Charlie, they had a destination wedding, and then they had the big gathering at Charlie's parents' house.
It was her parents' house.
And maybe one person, I forgot who the one person you got approval from on this, but they had a large front yard.
Yes.
One large enough for us to arrive.
To put a chopper down.
Yeah, we arrived in a helicopter, and I can't imagine what it's like just sitting there in a helicopter landing, but I can't have that perspective. I had the perspective as one of the people getting out of the helicopter to go to the wedding party at the parents' house.
The fact of the matter is once again, we have wonderful friends.
and so again, the reason why George is having this conversation with me, or why he needs to, is these are things I never would have done. They seem insane to me, especially at that time. Like, I wouldn't do that, but having gotten to know George and put in the time and the things that he had done for me to raise the degree of our friendship, he would have these ideas and it'd be like, yeah, I would do it totally thinking there's no way I would do this with anybody other than George. It was just really a continuous crazy ideas that he would have.
Well, we have a lot of things that we've had a lot of adventures. That's the good thing about this. The most important thing, though, is I think for the audience is we strike on the moments where if any of these things had an impact in your life, we should share those things. So what were some of the other things that we did that are most impactful for where we are today?
So I think bringing this all together to current day, how I was able to use those experiences to really change my life in recent years. So twice we traveled on a work thing, and then twice then we had these crazy arrivals to weddings, and then we might have not grown apart, but that was kind of the end of it because we didn't have work business to do, and we didn't have other people getting married. We
also lived 3 hours from each other.
Yeah, so we weren't seeing each other very often, and there would be months that would go by where we wouldn't talk, I think, during this stretch. And then at a certain point, I made a decision in my life that I was going to start traveling. And I would need to state this right now. For anyone that says and thinks, I would like to travel, I would want to travel someday, there is a person that perhaps will never make this podcast, but said something to me one time that totally changed my life, because I was having a conversation with her and I said, I want to travel, because she had done a lot of traveling. And then she stated, it was in writing, you can't want to travel. You either travel or you don't. And that struck me. That was like, that kind of hurt me. It's like, no, you can't say that to me. Don't say that. That I felt like you're right. And I was wrong. I felt like the way I was doing it, thinking I wanted to travel, I'll do this someday. It doesn't work. You can't just want to travel. So that was the summer of 2014 that happened. And around that time is when I decided, okay, I'm going to plan these things. Because prior to this, unless someone else planned it, unless my sister said, let's go to Las Vegas, or unless George said, let's crash these weddings, I wasn't planning anything. I was just kind of living my life, going day by day. And if something happened to come along, I'd say yes, but I wasn't initiating anything. So George and I hadn't seen each other done much in some time. And around that time, the decision was made, okay, let's find an open weekend for both of us. We picked one in September of that year, and we said, we're going to do something that weekend. We put it on the calendar. And that was it. We decided we were going to do something. And then about a month out, we decided, let's fly somewhere. And this is something I do constantly now when I'm traveling with somebody else. I think, where have you not been? Where have I not been? Where do we both want to go? And let's find a match. Let's find something that neither of us has done and do it. So at that time, we got it down to Seattle and San Francisco. We got cheap flights and cheap hotel type arrangement, Airbnb, actually, our first Airbnb ever in Seattle. And we booked a trip and we went. We decided, we bought the flight ticket with really no plans, nothing that we were going to specifically do, but we decided just to do it.
That's true. Well, yes, we did just decide
at that time.
But I, as is almost always too much the case, I would ask you things like, what do you want to do? And when we get there, I have like a list prepared. I've got like 7, 8, 9, 10, 14 things. I'm like, I want to do all these things. We have 36 hours. Go, But then I was like, well, what do you want to do, Curt? And you had one suggestion, which is totally fine.
Yeah, I want to see a Mariners game, which we did.
I was totally into that.
George it was probably somewhere between 7 and 10 things, and I think we might have done all of them. And so you asked the question, what impacted me? So a lot of those, they're fun. We did them, whatever. But there's one of them on that list.
Yes.
One that said, go paddleboarding
on the Puget Sound.
On the Puget Sound. And I saw that. I didn't really know what paddleboarding was at the time. And I saw that as the one thing I did not want to do. But because it was George, I didn't say anything right away. And I didn't say anything until after we were done, basically.
This is true.
I finally told him how much I did not want to do this. after we did it.
Well, this is humorous for me it was humorous for me then and is now, but it wouldn't have been had I had known this information. And the fact of the matter is my thinking was I had never gone paddleboarding before, and I thought if I'm gonna go paddleboarding, what better place than the Puget Sound? Let's do this. It's time. And we had a great time, except I recognized that there was some apprehension on your end only after we had gotten in the water. Now, this is deep water. I mean, there are seals, there's ocean liners, there's, it's real deep water, big water. And we're out there, we're having, doing our thing. You took a dunk in the water once, and I did not recognize the situation as it was in any way.
Oh. So 2-hour paddleboard rental. And as I'm getting on to the paddleboard, I'm thinking, I better put this life jacket on because I don't know how to swim.
So I don't know this.
And George, I guess I didn't tell him I didn't know how to swim. And maybe in our experiences together, we didn't establish that, or he had forgotten. And I'd never been on a paddleboard. And we got, the 5 or 6 minute video training of how to do this.
Right.
So I'm able to get on the paddleboard and start paddling. And it's going good. We actually go a distance where I'm feeling more confident. Like, okay, this is gonna work. I can do this whole 2 hours and not fall off. And sometime after I had that confidence, I went down. And this is the coldest water I ever fell into. And I don't know what it sounded like to witness me being in that water. I can't imagine if I've ever sounded more frantic and more.
It was a belly flop followed by frantic dog paddling and clamoring to get on this board that just
screaming rolled. And yelling, right?
Yes.
Just frightened child as a 30-plus-year-old man at the time.
I laughed so hard I dang near fell in myself. It was fantastic for me. But here's the thing. Long story short, we had to cross that channel, remember, where the boats would go into the harbor, and I was worried because the boats are coming, and boats don't have brakes.
These are big boats,
and they don't have brakes, and you're not exactly going as fast as I hoped you would. And I'm thinking to myself, oh man, what do I got to do here? What do I got to do to help this kid out as I'm waiting on the other side of the channel here? And you made it, which is wonderful because we're here today, and that's even better. But the fact of the matter is we got back to shore. We bring our boards up there, and you share with me how much you enjoyed it, but only after the fact, and that's because you didn't yet know how to swim.
So I fell in the water the first time, and it took me a while, and there's other people on paddleboard that demonstrated from a distance how to get back on. I was struggling for a while to get back on this paddleboard with obviously no place to put my feet at that point. So I got back on, got back to my feet, and I thought, okay, I know why I fell. This won't happen again. And I got back up confidently. I think I was telling George, I know why that happened. That won't happen again, as I fell on the second time. So at that point, I don't know that really in my life, and this is very, very truthful, I don't know if my confidence has ever been shattered more than that moment when I fell back into the water a second time, because I realized I thought I was confident, and I wasn't. This wasn't going to work. And we were about 30 minutes into this. And I didn't want to make George turn around and go back, but that's how I felt. I did not want to do this at all. I was just demoralized. But I got back onto the board, and I decided just to stay sitting. So I don't think I stood up the rest of the time. You can sit on these things and paddle, and it's fine. And I did that. We got to some little island type area or some part of the shore that had some old lighthouse. We walked around it, and it was whatever. And I got back on. We went back through. And I made it. And then I did explain to George how awful that was. It was just so terrible to be a part of that. But then when I finished, I'm like, I survived. I did it. It was terrible. It was the worst thing ever as it was happening. But I was so proud of myself that I stuck to it and got through it and got back on land. And so I guess that was the long story going to this right here. I didn't know how to swim, but because of that moment, realizing that if I ever somehow fell into an open body of water and didn't have a life jacket, I would almost certainly die unless someone got to me very quickly, because I realized I had no idea how to handle myself in that situation and zero confidence. So it might have been the next year or maybe within a couple years of that, I decided to take swimming lessons. And now I'm not a great swimmer, but I have the basic skills that I would be able to survive. Even in the cold Puget Sound, if that happened and I did that right now without a life jacket, I would be able to survive. I've now twice gone paddleboarding since then. Once actually just a few days ago with one of my nieces. And
embraced it.
Yeah, embraced it. Didn't fall in. Had I fallen in, wouldn't have been a big deal. Of course, I had the life jacket, but it wouldn't have really mattered because now I have the confidence to do that. And actually, I think it's true confidence, not this fake confidence that I tricked myself into thinking just prior to falling into the water that second time.
For sure.
So, George, by being someone that I don't want to disappoint, I mean, I don't know if this is actually a good thing, but I do these things with him knowing that from that experience and a couple of the things with the weddings, like these seem crazy to me. They seem like bad ideas. And they, more than anything, they seem like things that are pushing me beyond what I really want to do, what I really feel comfortable doing. But because of him and the experiences we've had, if George has an idea, I say yes, and I do it, and I hope not to die. And so far, so good.
This is a terrible power you've given me.
But really, as I guess this maybe is taking a little more time to get through all this than I want. Hopefully, as a listener, you're enjoying it. Please continue listening. But let's get to some of the other things that I've done, totally his idea, that I never would have done. So I think our next trip then, it was, you go through this idea that you had that somehow, because of what I've just explained, I got dragged into, half of it's me getting dragged into me willingly being dragged because I know it's good for me.
Kicking and screaming, yes. Our next trip was Spain. So I, without a doubt, I absolutely had to go to Spain and be in the running of the bulls. That had to happen. So this goes way back in my life. One of the major goals I had to partake in. I remember exactly where I was when I called you. I remember a lot about our conversation. I called you. I told you what I needed to do. I told you I wanted you to come with me. And I remember to some effect, I remember that you would you made a comment that was, I don't really want to go, but I guess.
That sounds about right. I had no interest in running with the bulls. This, of all of his ideas to that point, it was probably the stupidest one to me. It's like, why would I do this? Why would I subject myself to running with bulls? It makes no sense. The way I lived my life.
Yes, you had shared with me the dangers of being with cattle.
Yeah, I grew up on a farm.
Yes.
So I had been kind of chased by bulls before, and I got out of those scenarios alive. And to put myself in that position on purpose, it made no sense to me. So as some people, and certainly some of you listening, know that I've done this, but please know that I'm not some cool, wild, and exciting guy that goes and runs with bulls. No, George is, and I just say yes to go with them because I just know it's good for me. And it clearly was. Again, good for me.
It was. That was a long and epic, wonderful trip. But yes, I felt we absolutely I had to absolutely do that. I remember there was along with your apprehension as we went into that, there was no doubt that I was going to be a part of the actual run itself. But there was some question on your behalf. You said you were going to Spain. You were going to make your final decision day of.
Yeah. So this, I think, probably the same thing happened with the paddleboarding, and then another story that we'll get to shortly, where I say yes, thinking I'll probably do it, but still I don't want to do it. Like, I was in Spain, we were in Pamplona, we walked was it like 1 meter, or sorry, not 1 meter, 1 kilometer route of the path that the bulls take, and we walked through this, and I'm thinking, like, why would I do this? It just doesn't make any sense. It's the night before we were there, but what happens, and this happens every time, and this is, I suppose I can attribute it to myself and some other influences.
We're having such different experiences right now, by the way, because even in the Puget Sound, like, I'm looking around having this like dreamlike scape, looking around. I'm walking the route in Pamplona, and I'm thinking, this is going to be the best thing ever. It's everything I dreamed of. And we have different ends of the spectrum happening at the same time.
So you basically drag me again to Pamplona, and I'm there. And it's so cool to be there in Spain. We went to Barcelona, Madrid, and later we went to Paris and went to the Normandy beaches at D-Day. And we did all these things in this trip. But the reason for the trip was running with the bulls. And it's the morning. And we're going over there. We're all dressed up in the classic...
The regalia
to go do this. And we got up very early. and we were dehydrated, probably from drinking and our very long walk through the middle of nowhere that we had the night before. Anyhow, so I'm on this bus going there, and I finally decide I'm going to do it. And I'm thinking about my mom. I'm thinking, my mom doesn't know I'm doing this. And if I die, that will just destroy her. And I feel bad. But I got to do it. I can't come this close and not do it. And that's basically, I think that happened with the Puget Sound. And it happened with another thing we'll get into. I come so close, and I think I can't come this far and not do it. What does that say about me? What does it say about how I'm going to live my life? And I don't. So you get me to the brink with all these things I would never put myself that close to. And once I'm that close, I decide I have to. I just have to.
You can lead a horse to water. I can lead Curt to the edge and then see what happens. No, I think I was the only one who cheered on that bus when they closed the doors and we were on our way.
Oh, you were so excited. It was crazy.
Everyone else was so silent, as if we were going to our dooms. But I was like, woo!
So that happened. We did that. And for the sake of getting to all the stories, I guess we'll leave out some of the other details of all the other things. There have been so many great adventures. And
it's a good thing.
And I guess I really, as we go through this, I want to demonstrate to you, the listener, that, I mean, if you don't think you want to travel, well, maybe you would enjoy it, because I didn't think I wanted to travel, and now I love traveling and I want to keep going. And if you're someone that says, yeah, I'd like to do this some way, you can't just want to do it. You need to make a decision somehow how to do it. I would like to share George with the world and have him be there for everybody, every one of you that needs the push like I need it. I don't know that many of you will get that opportunity, but be aware that it does take people in your life. Perhaps if you want to do something and need that push, you need a push, you need to find a way to attach yourself to the people that'll help you. Or if someone's offering help, you need to take it. And George, I'm fortunate that George is someone that's been in my life. And I really would hope that anyone that wants more in this department, the traveling or adventurous or doing more or pushing themselves, that you find a way to do it, and this conversation inspires you.
I'm excited to meet you, world.
Well, I will share him with everybody. I just don't know if he has the time. But getting him to come here for a couple of days and do what we're doing right now is hard enough on its own at this point. So, and here's another corner that we turned then. So George got busier, and I became less busy, I think, during this time. So instead of him planning these adventures, the next time we went to Germany for Oktoberfest as a part of a group of 6. And George was like one of the last people to say that he would go. And this is something that certainly you would have wanted to do.
It was on my list. I absolutely wanted to go. It was about making sure that time was free in the schedule. Unfortunately, for me, sometimes that's a difficult thing, considering all my responsibilities and so forth at this time. But yes, it was a huge help that you stepped up and you totally took the reins on this particular trip.
So the way this shifted is when we went to Spain and France, I said, yes, I'll go. And we got the plane tickets. And then from there it was, George, I want nothing to do with the planning. You plan everything. And he did it. And that was important. But at this point, I had that experience. So now I could take more part in the planning. And George was someone that did none of the planning, which he needed at that time because he didn't have the time. And so we went to Oktoberfest. We had that experience, which is really walking into the big Hofbrauhaus tent on, I think it was a Friday morning at like 11 a.m. and just it's packed with thousands of people.
The angels sung on high.
It's an experience. Like all these experiences, I don't know that you can compare them to each other, and it's something that I would like more people to have the chance to do. And it's I guess it's there for you if you really set the goal and decide you want to do this. Any one of these things that we've done, you can do it, and you can reach out to me, and I'll give you whatever advice I can. So in that case, I inspired that trip, and a group of 6 of us went. And it was a wonderful trip. We also went to Austria. And that, I think, was that the one prior to our most recent one? Yeah, it was. So, and then the next time, so now we've made this a regular thing. Basically, every year or so, we have, the last few years, we've gone on a big international adventure. George and I, and then some other people sometimes. And so George, this last time, it was like, again, it's kind of more relating to when we decided to go to Seattle. It was more like, okay, we got to go somewhere. I don't know where to go. I watched my emails with some cheap flights, and they come through, and we discuss it a little bit. And sometimes we say, no, not this one, not this time. And then we had this Australia one. The flights to Australia were like $900 round trip from Minneapolis, which
that's incredible.
They've been a little cheaper, but not much. That's about as cheap as it's going to get. And we decided if we're going to go to Australia, let's do this. So in that case, we planned it months in advance. We bought the tickets months in advance and did nothing else. We did nothing else until about, I don't know, maybe a little more than 1 month before.
Deadlines make a lot of things happen.
They do. Oh, yeah. I don't really get much done without deadlines. And we began to plan this trip. We each took about half of the trip doing the planning. And there's one thing that stands out from that. We did so much in 2 weeks and went to many cities.
Did a lot of walking, didn't we, Jacob?
We did. Certainly, George and I don't mind as much. Our friend Jacob, I think, did not enjoy the walking as much as we were. We were okay with it. So the thing about the Australia trip, well, I think there's two things. One of them, we rappelled off of a building.
We did not plan that. I saw that in my things to do while in Brisbane, and I was like, we totally need to do this. Forward rappelling. They called it rap jumping.
Yeah.
So shout out to Brisbane rap jumping. Really fun, really great. You guys should go.
So we did that. Again, this was another situation where George really wanted to go. Jacob wanted to go. And I didn't want to go, but I didn't want to be the guy that stood there and didn't go. So I reluctantly say yes. I pay my $70 or whatever it was. And I get to the top of this roof, 6 stories up. And George went first.
Well, you guys all looked at me. They're like, who's going first?
Of course you're going first. It was your stupid idea. So you go first. And then Jacob goes, and then this actually was a time I was about to say no to this. Of all the things that I've done, I was standing at the top of the roof, and all the equipment, it's designed perfectly for it to be safe. But you stare down 6 stories, knowing you're about to go over the side of the building. If you're like
facing forward,
if you're like me, this is like, no freaking way. I'm not doing. When I got to that point, I was not going to go. I told the lady that was in charge, that was helping, that I'm not going to. Either I said or I just about to say, I'm not going to go. And then she pushed me over the edge.
Ooh.
And this isn't like the recent video where someone got pushed over into a river or whatever. We had proper equipment on. And what happened when I got pushed over the edge is I went like a foot and then it stuck. And it's like, oh, okay.
You're in control.
I'm pretty sure I'm not going to fall down. And then I started to enjoy myself. I still wasn't that good at it or comfortable with it, but I did it. We did it 2 more times. I got more comfortable. The next couple times, I think I willingly went over the edge. And again, he puts me in these positions of doing things I do not want to do, and then somehow I end up doing them anyhow.
Lead Curt to the edge, literally.
So that was at the beginning of that trip. So that I believe actually that might have been in Melbourne, but then we later.
Oh, I'm sorry, Melbourne.
We went we were up in the Brisbane area. We went there because you had planned. When we decided on Australia, one thing you definitely had to do was
I had to go scuba diving at the Great Barrier Reef. Had to happen.
That didn't have to happen for me. I had no specific interest in ever going scuba diving. I wanted to go to the Great Barrier Reef.
Yes, but I felt if you were going to experience it, you had to do that. So we found a team, a wonderful team, excellent group that offered us the ability to get introductory lessons on how to do scuba diving, and they would do so at the reef. So yeah, we totally freaking did that.
And fortunately, or unfortunately, the boat ride on, I think, the Lady Musgrave experience from where we were to the southernmost islands of the reef was like 2.5 hours. So on there, we had our training with Danny, our instructor. We got our training. There's no in the water training. It's basically, we're going to tell you how to do your hand signals because you can't talk to anybody down there. And then we get
It's a written exam. It's mostly sign your name to sign your rights away.
And again, this is something so I got on the boat. Again, I got on the boat. And just before that, I'd kind of decided, I guess I have to do this. This is something I shouldn't be doing, but I'm going to do it because I've come this close. Just do it. So let's fast forward to us being in the water, the whole scuba setup on. George, super excited. And maybe not as, I don't know if you've been more confident about things before, but this is what you wanted to do. And actually, Jacob and I are in the water, and both of us had become quite reluctant. And as we move forward, I was put in the position, as Jacob was, they give us the option. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. And Jacob opted out. Now, he was very happy. He went snorkeling and got plenty of snorkeling time. So I think he was okay with it. And I was in the water, and I really struggled to not take in water through the mask. In part because I have this beard that was inspired to be grown by George for the time we dressed as pirates to go to the wedding. I'd never had a beard before that. And since then, I've only gone like 3 months without a beard. So again, George does everything to influence my life in every way. But
I'm a life
if you
coach.
are going to go scuba diving, this is my first advice to you. Shave your beard before you go if you have a beard. It causes problems. And for me, I took in a lot of water and I didn't know how to manage that. So you were in the water. You were like ready to go. But Danny, our instructor, had to like take a lot of time with me because I was struggling. And eventually, after going down a meter or two, I gave up. I said I couldn't do it because I kept on taking in too much water and I was panicking. And even though they teach you how to get rid of the water, I couldn't do it very well. And I got up. I gave up because I knew I took up too much time already. I wanted George and Tibor, our friend that we had met, to go have this experience. And you were down in the water for maybe 20, 30 minutes at that point. And I was sitting. If you want to give your experience from being at the Great Barrier Reef, do that in a moment. But meanwhile, while you were down there enjoying the reef, I was sitting there thinking, I failed. Or what do I do? What do I do now? And he did offer if I wanted to try again that I could, but having experienced what I just experienced, it felt like I maybe shouldn't because it was bad. It didn't go well and I was so panicky. But then I decided, okay, I'm sitting here. It's my last opportunity. I'm going to find a way. Finding a way to succeed at this, it means something. And being able to persevere through the adversity of that moment, I decided I was going to try again. So you talk a little bit about what it's like to be down there. You spent more time, I think, than I did.
It's tremendous. It's a learning experience. You have to do a lot. Something that I had to remember in a lot of ways was that, scuba diving is a slow motion sport. And that's the way it was described to us by Danny, who's a fantastic instructor. He took his time. He was professional. He was funny. He was all these wonderful things. But I don't think our experience, my experience down underwater, because I absolutely loved it, is as important as how this has impacted you and as we share to our audience, maybe. But yeah, these are the things that I absolutely feel I need to do. And it has been wonderful to know that, like, I don't feel that you have to do these things. I like that you allow for me to have the opportunity to do these things while we travel. It's even better, though, that you decide that it's something you want to try yourself because it's an experience we get to share.
But George, it's not want to try. It's not a want. It's a need. I feel like when I'm that close to something so big, so cool, like when I talk about it, this is something that sounds cool. And I don't do it to be someone that says that, I did this cool thing. I scuba dived at the Great Barrier Reef. But that's such a big thing in the scheme of like international travel. That's pretty freaking cool, I think, to be able to have done that. And because you got me so close and knowing that I've persevered through some of these other things with you before when I was not comfortable with them and did them anyhow, I gave it a second chance. I went with the next group and I found a way to keep the water from coming in the way it had been. And the undercurrent, maybe you experienced the same thing, that it was difficult to be underwater that day. And I wasn't like totally under control. Danny, who I think one day I'll have on this podcast because he's an American guy living in Australia giving scuba diving lessons every day at the Great Barrier Reef, which is freaking cool. And I would like to learn more about his story. He had to like hold my hand a lot. So I'm underwater looking at the Great Barrier Reef with a grown man holding my hand. And that's not the most proudest part of it, but the fact that I was able to find a way to be down there and be face to face with the coral and the sea life that's there. That was really incredible to know that I was so close to giving up and I just decided, no, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to find a way. And that's something that I've learned from our experiences together, that I find ways to do these things. And if you hadn't put me in these positions, maybe I could have learned that some other way, but I'm not sure how, because these are some really big, scary type of things that you've put in front of me without really knowing probably how scary they are to me. And then I just do them because I know if I survive, that it's just they're the most impactful moments of my life. With the magic of a podcast and audio recording, it's now a day later in George and my current world. We're now back in Minnesota. We've already experienced the Jeff Lynne ELO concert, and it was one of the better concerts I've ever seen.
I thought it was tremendous. I thought the mix was great. I thought the lighting was super crisp. It was a hell of a lot of fun. Jeff himself still has it, 70 years old, still sounds great. I hope he's enjoying himself out there.
besides the concert, another example of George influencing me and me trusting in the way that he does things. So this is our day yesterday. We were at the hotel in Wisconsin. We were about 3 hours away from where we were staying in Chicago. We drove there shortly after we finished recording what you just listened to right prior to us starting here again. And then during the drive, well, we listened back to that actually. So that was kind of useful and interesting as we continue this conversation. But something happened where George had brought a costume with him. Well, not costume, but he was planning to dress in a very specific way for the concert. And this I was not prepared for.
My game time attire.
And there'll be an opportunity to see this elsewhere within my podcast website here and People I Know show. But the thing about it is this has happened before where George is very prepared to dress a certain way for something we're doing and I'm not prepared. And I've learned that I have to do it. So one of the first times,
yes,
Barcelona.
I'm like a Boy Scout, except I don't know any I don't know no knots, but for whatever reason I have a novelty wig with me at all times.
Yeah, it was crazy. Like, wait, it's like I can't go with you and be in the same photo with you and you're dressed like this and I'm not. And that's happened before. So Barcelona, it was easy. Or sorry, not Barcelona, Pamplona for the Running the Bulls. I mean, we already talked about that. We dressed
wearing the appropriate regalia.
Then the next time it happened, when we went to Oktoberfest in Munich, Germany, you were dead set on buying lederhosen.
The very first thing I did, I told everyone as I got off the airplane, I said, the first thing I'm doing, I don't mind what anyone else is going to be doing, but the first thing that I'm doing is I'm getting off the plane, I'm going to find some lederhosen. And that's how I'm going to participate in this environment. I didn't have any at the time, but I had brought with me the rest of the stuff, say like a shirt, socks, boots, all that stuff. But yeah, had to happen. And I remember a lot of the folks that we had been with on that trip, because we went with a good number of friends, they looked at us and they looked at me and they were like, "Are you sure that you want to do it?" Now, when we got there, quite honestly, there was a price to be paid to have lederhosen. Some of them were exorbitantly expensive.
And that's the first ones we came across. I would not have purchased them at that initial price, but
yes,
we found a shop that
we did find. So we decided to shop around. The problem is we were racing the clock because it was getting later and later into the evening. And so we went and did that, but we found a shop that had what I would call reasonable prices. We paid something just north of like €100. What is it, like 120 American or something like that at the time?
Which still I thought, so you were dead set on buying that. And I, at that price, thinking I might wear it one time, I couldn't initially justify it. But as happens, George brings me so close to things, and then I picture the picture. Like,
right. When you tell the story of being in this place, wherever it was, whatever you're doing, do you want to be able to tell people that you were dressed just as everyone else? What's important is that photo. I don't care if we never wear those lederhosen again. You know what I'm saying? We were wearing them in the moment we had our photo taken while we were in Germany. That's the point. That's the purpose, to be full in. Dive into the deep end. If you're going to do this, all in.
So the best, maybe not all of them, but I'd say the majority of the best, most memorable photos I have of myself doing something, George is standing next to me and we're in some sort of attire that really brings the photo and makes it so meaningful. And again, I learned my lesson from him before, most recently probably with the lederhosen. And then, so yesterday, after we recorded the first part of this episode, making our way down, I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to do this? Well, I really didn't understand what I needed or what I didn't know. So we dressed up as Jeff Lynne. And if you're not familiar with Jeff Lynne, you can Google it and this all makes sense. But
lead singer of the band ELO.
And we went to a couple Goodwill stores, stopped at a dollar store that didn't have anything for us. And I guess we finished back at the Goodwill store that we were at before, but also went to a Party City. And I pulled together just two items. I needed a wig and I needed a sport coat, things I did not have with me. Yes, George has a wig with him at all times. I did not.
And a crazy blue blazer.
And we pulled it together, and the photos, which will be available to see. The photo is by far better because I was matching George. And then, so, okay, this has happened a few times in my life. Maybe you're a bigger celebrity than me, George, because I know I'm not a celebrity. But because we were dressed as
You're
a
the one
celebrity,
hosting the show, Curt.
we were dressed as the lead singer of the band that, I don't know, 12,000 people, whatever, were there, came to see. Random people were taking photos with us as if we were, whatever, something cool, exciting, special. And maybe for the sake of that event, we were. It was kind of weird. It's random strangers asking for photos with us.
It was a heck of a lot of fun. You know, just adding to the people's experience. You know, that our experience is made better by having made other people's experience better.
Absolutely. People were excited to be sitting near us, even though we're just two other people at the show. And that not because if George and I go there in our normal clothes, no one's excited to sit by us. Certainly.
Go figure.
Well, okay, maybe. Realistically, no. But because we decided to dress for the event, people just loved it. So that was neat. And that's a good reminder, when possible, to do that type of a thing. So I think we've gotten through a lot of the ways that you've inspired me to do things differently. And I know you've impacted me in great ways, George. But now is an opportunity if for a listener out there trying to understand, okay, this George guy has inspired Curt, great. And maybe Curt's trying to inspire me, or you, I guess, the listener. That's my goal of this, but explain how you live your life, why you do the things the way you do, George, because to me, you are very different than almost anybody I've gotten to know. And your philosophy on life must just be quite a bit different than the average person I come across.
When you say philosophy, I struggle. I think to myself, what am I must have like crazy hair, wearing sandals all the time, writing a book of some sort, which might be very well
you had
true.
crazy hair yesterday.
Well, then I have to consider that maybe perhaps I'm worthy of being carved in stone. And if you've met me, of course, I look as though I've been chiseled from stone. So my philosophy would be, let me think. Okay, maybe there's a few things that I can sum it up. I can sum it up quickly. They probably need some explanations, but I would say that how I choose to live my life would be by a couple of sayings here. The one is, when faced with a decision, always ask yourself, what would make the best story? That's how I like to live. And the other things I would say I do is, don't ever be the smartest guy in the room, which isn't hard for me, because if I'm licking the window, blowing snot bubbles, you know, it's not hard. But I guess these things are important, and I believe in also being sure that you have two choices in any one scenario, and you can choose this for yourself. I would say you can either be an observer or a participant. And I choose more often than not to be a participant, because I want to find the direction I have in my time and in my way. And that would be the third one. And then, see, here I'm writing that book I was just telling you about. I just need the sandals. I'm not wearing sandals yet. Give me some sandals. I would say that the other part about it is I also very much believe this statement, and that is, I have great contempt for contentment. So which of these do you want to tackle?
Here's the one I want you to elaborate on. I think I understand what you mean by saying you don't ever want to be the smartest guy in the room, but for someone listening that maybe has sometimes too often been the smartest guy in the room, smartest gal in the room, what would your advice to that person be?
So this isn't like an ego thing. That's important to remember, because ego doesn't impress anyone except the guy in the mirror. You know, that's not what this is about. It's very akin to surround yourself with good people. But if you're looking, the purpose of this podcast, if you're looking to improve and elevate and make significant change in your world, it's only best, I think, to be around other people who are doing that sort of thing for themselves. Now, it could be in anything. You can have a great many interests in life. I hope everyone does. A lot of different passions. Find persons that share those same passions, who definitely know more, who are willing to share their experiences and grow with you. That's what I would suggest in that regard. And that's a treasure that you're never going to want to run short on. Surround yourself with good people and people who are driven and want to succeed and do better. That's going to rub off on you if you have that desire as well. And that's what I mean by don't be the smartest guy in the room. There's plenty of people out there with knowledge, smarts, experience that are going to be able, you're going to learn from other people by not being the smartest guy in the room. And that's why you want to be in that room.
Okay, let's go back to the first one now. And I think this one's pretty self-explanatory. But when coming to the decision, you choose based on what's going to give you the opportunity to tell the best story.
The better story. Okay, yeah. So with that, another guiding light in my life is when faced with decisions, I often ask myself, what will make for the better story? Now, this can often be interpreted as this sort of thing will come up. Someone asks me at a social gathering, hey, how are we doing this? And we have to make a decision. Like, this epic moment is only going to live if we push it to the limit. So we have to do that. That will absolutely be the case. That could be how we make our best decision. What is going to make the best story? When we tell the story of this night, how are we going to be able to tell it? It's going to be because we make the right decision here. The other part about it is, though, and this is the balance, and all of life is about balance, I think, and that is sometimes the correct answer when faced with this choice is go to bed early. It is, which it seems counterintuitive, of course, from what I just said. I'm aware of this, but if you know that what you have to do tomorrow, the next day, or in any other way is going to bring about an even better ability to participate in the moment that you are going to live tomorrow, foregoing staying up all night tonight for just for some random hope that something might happen is now nowhere near as valuable as whatever we have to do tomorrow, because that will be important as well, and potentially even more important.
Here's an example from my life on that line. Like, when I started traveling, it's not cheap to travel. It costs larger sums of money spent over a fewer amount of days. And something I realize is I enjoy that so much more than the typical weekend night or weeknight going to a bar, just going kind of hanging out, spending money when I don't need to. That'd be an example of me maybe going to bed early those nights. Not doing the smaller thing that I've done many times that's okay, but not amazing. I will save up my resources and put them towards that amazing adventure. And then in the end, I probably have the same amount of money left had I lived maybe my former lifestyle several years ago. I'd be going, the weekend hit and I'd just go to the bar because that's what I did. That's all I knew. And that part of my life, for a few reasons, is over. But I definitely save my energy and money resources when I need to for something much bigger.
Yeah, and that would be a perfect example of that. And so then you would know. But that being said, I also don't want to go too far. Again, it's about balance. I don't want to go too far one way or the other, because then the other thing is you have to just be open to the moment. So it might make perfect sense that for whatever reason, going to the bar tonight, being open to it, and talking to that guy you probably wouldn't want to. When you walked in, you're like, that guy, I don't know who he is or what he's doing, but I don't want nothing to do with that guy. That might be entirely the opposite of what you should be doing. You have to be able to read the moment, and that only comes with experience, of course, but you have to be open to that moment. And when that guy's like, hey, by the way, we're all going to White Castle, we're getting a bunch of crave cases, you're all coming with.
So that guy was you.
That could have been. It could have, absolutely. And when you all jump in the back of like a 30-year-old limousine and you go to White Castle, suddenly you've got a night in the making. You know what I'm saying? So like, it's about being open to moments and then also knowing how to read them. There are times, like, there's nothing worse than like trying to make something out of nothing. If there was like, I see so many, kids like, they're like trying to make this night epic, but there's no ingredients there for the epic.
Yeah.
So you have to be open to what it is. And you're right. So sometimes small moments can grow quickly and you want to be a part of that. Other times, quite frankly, going to work and getting the job done and excelling at this is going to pay dividends in the future. So by all means, make sure that you put the time in now to get that other goal later. There's no doubt in my mind you and I would be doing this traveling that you're talking about if we didn't apply ourselves and kick butt at work, because that's what our job is. We have to work hard. Hopefully you can play even harder.
Yeah, when I put in weeks where I'm working 50, 60, 70, 80 hours, sometimes I do that. I don't really want to live that lifestyle forever, but I do it knowing that in that time, that week, I'm buying some future freedoms that I will really enjoy, and it definitely proves to be worth it.
Opportunity. You're working for opportunity.
So you had a couple of things on the list. What more do we pull from that?
What was the other one I gave you? Oh, yeah. Great contempt for contentment. Now, this is something I'm not going to lie to you that I don't recommend everyone apply this to their life. I feel as though I've taken a number of persons who were ready to be Padawans growing into Jedi, and I would give them my life coaching ways to help them in the directions they seek. But I would say this works for me, and that doesn't mean it works for everybody else. But quite frankly, I don't do good with contentment, and so I'm not interested in it. And what I mean by that is I certainly allow myself to feel a sense of accomplishment when it's warranted. I allow for myself to find a way to reflect upon good moments if I've earned them. But at the same time, contentment works for a lot of people, and that is a good thing. But for some of us, and I'm only talking about me, I am not interested in contentment because contentment doesn't give me happiness. It never has. And I had to take some time to reflect upon myself to discover that I will be happier not being content than I ever will be being content.
Okay. And I can definitely see that in knowing you that, yeah, I don't really ever remember a time where you just were okay with the way things were, and that was enough for you.
Right. And that's so you're going to lose a lot of sleep. You're going to burn yourself out. You're going to kill yourself by living that way. But it's about where do you want your values and your quality of life to reside. I would tell you what, for those that contentment does work, by all means, make sure that it's actually wholesome, true, and real. That's maybe more important than anything. It's about finding what your authenticity is. That's what I would share. Whatever every individual's authenticity is, that's what they need to hold on to. And for neurotic people like myself or something, I guess that means no contentment. But for others, I think if you can find contentment and you can find that helps you find your peace or your place to be genuine, you're only going to be more genuine to everyone else around you, which I think is going to be a service to them, but also yourself.
And one thing that you have mentioned about us and why we have built this friendship the way that we have is I think we do see in each other this genuine person that, I mean, there's more than just us that are out there that really try to be genuine, but it's maybe not as common as we'd like. So and you find someone that you really can connect with in that way. I think it's very important, and that can bring up the value of life, value of our experience.
Opportunities in life open up when you can be genuine, but the other thing I would say about that is that just by saying those words, there might be somebody who hears those words and thinks, oh, I know who I am, so I'm just going to be genuine. The honest God truth is no one can ever truly be genuine until they take a lot of time to get to know themselves. And that takes time and energy and focus and all these things that are just all consuming sometimes. And it's going to come in fits and starts for people. And good things in life are going to happen once you can reach that point, but it doesn't happen overnight. So you can't push it. You're going to have these epiphany moments. That's when it's going to start building itself, I think. Looking back in life, that's absolutely something that I can say that I experienced. So I read this book. I believe it's called On Directing, written by David Mamet. There's a line in there. I'm going to paraphrase. I don't believe I can quote it perfectly, but there was to some effect. He said, look, if you're going to be a filmmaker, make sure you have something to say. And if you haven't got anything to say yet, get out there and live a little. Mm-hmm. And that rung true for me. So I just said, okay, I feel that way. Like that paraphrased a feeling I had inside me. I wasn't sure what I wanted to say. Everyone's looking for who they are in some capacity, but you have to live to find out who you are. And that's the challenge. You have to survive that arduous trek of finding out who you are, because it can kill you. But it's worth it if you're willing to be honest with yourself. And quite frankly, it takes a ton of reflection. And more often than you might want, any one of us might want to admit, is that you might see something in yourself that you don't like. Some quality, something that you've done, and you're going to hopefully learn from that. And if you truly are bothered by that, that's when I think real change happens. I think a lot of people are bothered by things. A lot of things are annoying to others. I think something doesn't really bother a human being until they decide to change it. People complain all the time. They might be really upset. Maybe they feel powerless to change things. And sometimes that change is required by pulling the levers of the giant mechanisms of society and otherwise. I'm talking about personal self-growth, because a lot of who you are, even after you think you are genuine, requires deep and true reflection on who you are. And that's going to change as you live life and have new experiences.
And that's a perfect lead up to a transition we're going to get into in just a moment. Why I have this podcast. I think that's why, or what the last 4, 5, 6 years has been for me, really learning about myself. And I put myself in a lot of new situations, met new people from all over the world. And the different influences that I've taken in has put me in a position where now I feel like I do have something to say, something that I can actually teach people. Maybe 5 years ago I could have too, but I didn't feel like, as you referenced the line from the book, that at that time I didn't feel like I had something to say. Now I do. I really think that the last 5 or 6 years I would have really done differently, and the people that have come into my life and the people that have influenced change in me. This is worth talking about. You are one of those people that we really elevated some of the things that we've done in the last few years, and you really changed who I am, or maybe not changed who I am. You've been an influence of positive change.
You've done all the hard work, Curt. Take a little credit.
And well, maybe George. I think you end up doing more work than me most of the time, because you're.
I hate contentment.
You do, and that it really shows. So this gets us into one of the segments I'd like to have on every episode, and hopefully I'm able to hold to that. I'm going to call it the being wrong segment, as I have changed a lot and done some things differently in the past few years, especially. I've recognized areas of my life where I thought about something and I was wrong. That's been my experience. Maybe other people don't experience it the same way, but I've been able to really change my viewpoint, sometimes a full 180 on some things. And I think that is the biggest thing in allowing for personal growth, is to recognize things that you think are correct, and then suddenly realizing, or maybe over a long time realizing, maybe I'm not right about that, and really looking into it deeply and re-educating yourself, unlearning something, relearning, and possibly coming with a different answer to what you thought was correct, and then moving forward with that new information and new perspective. So every guest that I have on, I'm going to ask to have at least one powerful experience from their life that relates to that. George, explain something to me, to the listeners, something that you were wrong about and now have a totally different perspective on.
Wrong? I don't know what you're talking about. Who have you been talking to, Curt?
I don't know.
I don't know if I'm wrong. I don't think I've ever been. No, that can't be true. That can't be true. Again, self-reflection. I have to go, woosa. I gotta reflect here. Okay. I would say, yeah. Okay. So this I want to make this story as it spans years. So we're gonna make it as quick as we can. Okay. So I grew up with some really amazing kids. I grew up with a great group of friends who I stay in touch with to this day. And I'm seriously fortunate to have these people in my life. And I am very, very pleased to say that we're still talking, we're still friends, and everything's good. But we had so much fun when we were kids, okay? So early on in my life, I would say that, yes, I was already discovering how important it was to make that decision. When faced with a choice, choose the choice that makes for the better story. Even if it's harder, even if it's more difficult, even if it requires more energy, time, resources, whatever it is, make that choice. That's what worked for me. And I would be with my friends and we would do those things. And we had so much fun together. We created so many great stories that way. You know, when I tell the stories of my youth in that way now, it's like telling the stories from a Hollywood script or, you know, the best fairy tales that, you know, urban/suburban Americana can possibly give a youth. But I guess what I found out as I was growing older, like that mentality entirely works for me. And I had so much fun with these friends and these dear people in my life. I thought that for sure they would want to do the same thing just like this for the rest of our lives, like living at full throttle all the time. And I discovered that as much as I've been reflecting on myself and taking time to learn that that's really important to me and my personality and who I am, that other people have other thoughts, feelings, and goals and missions as well, and they're different from mine. It was troubling for me to start going through that transitional period when I felt like, sure, yeah, everyone goes off and learns their skills by going to school and getting their job and following whatever that passion would be. But at the same time, like we're still going to follow this ethos of living life to the best story possible. The thing is the best story possible is an individualistic question. And so it's different for other people. So as I had friends making other choices that I would make, now, these are good choices. I'm not talking like, you know, they're knocking off banks or anything, which again would be, as long as it's research for the next, you know, Oscar winning script, maybe we can argue that. But no, I mean, like they're making wonderful, like, good choices and so forth. They're doing things that are different from me in my life. So to bring this even more specifically, this rounds out to you again. I have this wonderful friend who's still in my life, and he has made. I think he's happy and he's doing all these wonderful things. He has a family, he has a home. He's got his work. You know, he's got all these things in his life that are really important to him, and he has jumped in headfirst on this the way I'm telling you I jump in headfirst on all these crazy adventures that you and I have shared, and that's a wonderful thing. Now, it's a slightly more domesticated sort of life, and for me that was hard to accept because in our past together we were always side by side, 100 miles an hour, running our bikes down the hill, hitting the jump, you know, trying to get over the pond that was more than likely filled with either piranhas or chemical pesticides. Either way, one of us was not getting out of that water if we fell into it. What I would say is that so he and I we made this pact when we were still in school. He said he had always wanted to go skydiving, and he wasn't sure if he wanted to do that on his own. So he said, "George, I want you to be one of the people that comes with me. I'm going skydiving." And I thought to myself, yeah, that sounds awesome. We can do that. We'll do that on one condition. You help me with my goal, and that is we're going to go to Spain, and we're going to do the running of the bulls. All right? We shook on it. We agreed on it. We were going to do this. Long story made short, okay? I ended up being his best man, planned his bachelor party. We had a wonderful time. Everything about that celebration was wonderful and beautiful, but we did go skydiving for his bachelor party. All right, I kept my promise, and when we got on the ground, I remember I told him, "All right, the other half of this pact is on you. This is up to you to keep your end of the bargain." Long story short, the realities of the life that he now leads did not allow for the flexibility to go to Spain with me. I asked him if he wanted to go when I was ready to go. I asked him a couple of times as years were going by, is this the year? Are we going to do it? Whatever. Eventually, it became very clear that it wasn't an opportunity that he could have in any kind of near future plans. And is that disappointing for me? It was disappointing only from the standpoint that I hoped to share that experience with him because he's such a dear friend of mine. But I have also learned that the choices that other people have to make in order to live a full and healthy and productive life, because they're different from mine, doesn't make them wrong. And I remember now more than ever that he is my friend, and we are simply happy for one another that we are living the lives that we desire to have. And that's incredibly important. And I was ready to invite you to come to Spain with me regardless, but I had to invite my friend the last time, but it bummed me out a little bit that he wasn't in a position to be able to devote the time and energy focus to that trip. But you were. And fortunately, at that point in our lives, we were in the same spot in the same way, ready to make the choice that would lead to the best story. And so we did that together, and I will always, always treasure that. But what was I wrong about? I learned that other people may really want contentment, and that's a good thing. It's a really good thing for them. Contentment might be the right answer for somebody else out there, and they need to make the choices that lead to the story that builds contentment, whatever that takes form for them. That's important. I was wrong in thinking that because we had so much fun doing this, my friends and I, that this would go on forever. I'm still seeking to have that go on forever, as long as it's still fun for me. I'm going to keep doing that. And other people will join me as they feel that it works for them. But I can't ever forget that because somebody else has to make a different choice, that choice might be the healthy one for them. And that was a big lesson, and I learned that.
So it sounds like it was a lesson in perspective. And I think, like for me, I try to do a better job of taking other people's perspectives and considering what other people see when they see the world as best someone can take a perspective of somebody else. And I know one of my big failings, and this is a great exact reason why I want everyone that I have on this show to say something they're wrong about. Because even this one, for me, I know one of my biggest failings still, even though I think I do a better job than I used to of taking perspectives, is I still, in some moments, when I have some ideas about the world or how it should work or how people should live their lives, I do forget the perspectives that other people don't think the way that I think, and other people do different things. And it certainly can be okay in many of the cases. And I think I fail in my perspective sometimes. And it sounds like you learn that, yes, his perspective is allowed to change, and you can live different lives at a certain point.
That's right. And we can still be friends. We still are to this day. Everything I said. Always look forward to every opportunity to see the guy. But that's the thing, is like, if everyone was doing what we're doing, Curt, at the same time, our lives would probably not be as exciting because there's no contrast between anyone's lives and other people's lives. Then, if that's what the key is. The unique and interesting characters that we have had the opportunity to meet on these travels and in anything else that we're doing, that's because other people are doing different things in different ways. And that is one of the spices. That is more abundant to me than almost anything else now from these adventures, is that it is the differences between all of us that makes it truly unique and interesting and exciting. But at the same time, those differences, as you well know, also lead to what we have that is all the same amongst us. And that experience of humanity that's what we relish.
And this reminds me about when you're telling the story of, he couldn't go with you. When you told me that some years ago before we went on this trip, we went in 2015. It was maybe 2014, possibly 2013. You had presented this to me previously. We ended up not going. And I remember you calling me and saying that you couldn't do it that year based on either responsibilities or finances. You weren't going to be able to pull together for that year. So I didn't even have to make the decision. You said that we couldn't be going because I was still on the fence. And I remember feeling relieved that I didn't have to go. I didn't have to go run with the bulls. But then,
once again, the perspective, the spectrum there. I'm distraught, and you're relieved.
But we did end up going, and we talked about this after we recorded the first part of this episode yesterday. You remembered the phone call of when I did decide that I would go.
This is true, yeah. And I alluded to that a little bit, and I forgot to add a line to that, and that was. I think this is a great illustration of what you were getting to about how your experiences are a growth mechanism for you and how you're trying to create change in your life, because you've already told the story about the Puget Sound and our paddleboarding experience, and you've gone through all of that. But when I called you to go to Spain and I told you what we needed to do, there was going to be a whole host of things. We're going to tour, Western Europe, see these great things. But by the way, we have to do the running of the bulls. That's not negotiable. You said to me, the lines that I don't really want to do this, but this sounds so much like paddleboarding in the Puget Sound, where I didn't want to do it when I first went, but I was so overjoyed that I survived it and I lived it once I got done with it. I feel like this running with the bulls is just like that. So what the heck? I'll go with you and do this too.
So that was probably 1 year later from when I was relieved when you said we didn't have to go. And then I came to the realization that the fact that George is going to do this someday, I can't not be the one to go with him. And that just shows that in that 1 year, because in that year's time, we had the experience of the paddleboarding and me deciding that was worth it. That changed me. It's a specific example of how my thinking changed in the year. I went I didn't want to really go either year, I guess, but I made the decision that I had to go that second year. So it all kind of falls together. And
I was tricking you with baby steps.
And I hope that wasn't too repetitive from what we talked about earlier in the episode. But that's going to wrap up that whole portion of getting to know George, and George helping you, the listener, get to know me better, and why this People I Know Show podcast exists, and why I'm trying it and hoping that it can make small impacts, maybe a big impact for someone somewhere. Who knows? I'm not sure what's to come. But the other opportunity I want to give anyone that is on my show, and there's going to be hopefully many, 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 many people in the future, you get to talk about yourself in a way that can promote yourself, George. This is an opportunity for you to promote anything that you're doing. And I'm assuming it's going to be about your line of work that you do a tremendous job. And you reference video. There's a couple of video film references. We haven't even talked about what you do for a living. And now this is an opportunity for you to tell the listeners what it is you do and how possibly, if they were interested at some point, they could reach out to you.
Yeah, I do. I work in video production, and so we make all kinds of really great stuff. We have a lot of fun. Our focus, in a lot of ways, is making a product that people who really respect the craft of filmmaking. We look forward to working with them. So my business partner and I, we made a production company. We make everything from commercials and documentaries and web video and training video and look, if you need a camera and you need some really sweet lighting and you need some really great ideas to show up on screen, that's what we want to do for you. So we have a lot of fun doing that. And yeah, I think there's a lot of power in that medium. And you can use that to really make some wonderful changes in people's lives. I mean, we all have memories of great movies that we watched, television shows. What do? We quote films back and forth all the time. This has been inspiring to me my whole life, and so in one way or another, yeah, it has led me to work in this medium, and we're always excited to keep doing that. I wake up every day super happy to go to work.
And what is your ultimate goal or dream at this point in that line of work?
Most certainly, I'm spending a lot of time helping other people develop and create their visions. And it's been incredibly rewarding and very exciting. Like so many other filmmakers out there, you want to make your own vision as well. So I think that I've had a tremendous opportunity to learn, grow, develop, and refine my skills. And certainly I look forward to continuing to do that. But yes, absolutely. I'm interested in developing some products of my own. And I think if all goes well, if I make the changes I'm looking for, maybe we won't be listening to me, but maybe you'll be reading my name in the credits.
That'd be amazing. And if there's someone listening right now that is interested in learning more about how maybe they want to hire you or get in contact with you in some way, is the best way to allow someone to find you?
I would say it's best to reach out and look at our website. That is stringlinepictures.com. The word string, the word line, one word, pictures.com.
Okay, and they'll be able to get a hold of you there if they have the need or the desire.
Absolutely.
And maybe everyone's going to have the desire now. You're going to be flooded with emails and contacts, and your busy life's going to get busier suddenly.
But that'd be fine. That'd be totally fine. There's always more room for wonderful projects and great people.
All right, George. Well, thank you for taking the time on this. Thank you, listeners, for tuning into the first episode. And this one, I think, went a little longer than I will typically go, but I think to learn about me and to learn about George all in one episode, it took a little bit more time, but I'd hope for the listener that it was worthwhile. George, anything else from you?
I don't know. I'm looking forward to meeting everybody else out there in the world.
All right. Thanks, George. Please make sure you subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen to this podcast. And if you don't know how to subscribe on iTunes and or rate and review on iTunes, send me an email, peopleiknowshow@gmail.com. Or check out and follow the Facebook and Instagram pages, People I Know Show. One word, search on both of those websites. Happy to have any of your feedback, positive or negative. And you can send it to peopleiknowshow@gmail.com or on Facebook or Instagram. And the other thing, if you are doing something to make lives better, I'd be happy to hear from you and perhaps include you on a future episode of People I Know Show. Watch for the next episode soon.